Hi, boys and girls. So it is Tuesday, and we are not having a live meeting this morning, and I do apologize for that. I am actually out today, and so this is going to kind of replace, this video will replace our need for a live meeting this morning. So what you're looking at right now is a split screen. We've done this before where you can kind of see the document I'm working on, the graphic organizer over here, and the text is visible to you here. So I'm going to kind of be working on both screens. Don't let that stress you out too much. I'm going to work through this kind of slowly. But you can see here, this graphic organizer should look familiar. We are talking about character development, and we're using one of the characters from The Bat Boy and His Violin, the text that we read yesterday. We're going to focus on Papa. So Reginald's father, he goes by the name of Papa throughout the story. We know that good readers improve their comprehension of a fiction or a literary text. One way is by focusing on the character development, or how the character changes from the beginning to the middle of the text and finally the end of the text. And we can do that by really focusing on Papa's character and how he was feeling in those different sections of our story. So let's get started. Again, thinking about Reginald and his interaction with Papa and why we do this, because focusing on how our characters change throughout the story helps us to comprehend the story. And what we said on Monday was that it's really through those character actions, the way they act and the way they react to different events in the story, that help lead us to the theme of the story. So something that we want to talk about later this week, the theme. So we're going to take a look back and we're going to think about Papa and how his character's changing. So I'm going to zoom in here on this section of the graphic organizer for a moment to focus just on the beginning of the text. So when I think of the beginning of the text, really what I'm thinking of, this illustration here, I can see where Reginald's playing the violin. I know he's sitting there in his living room, and then he makes that comment about, oh, I bet Papa's home. And he says, I wonder what kind of mood he's going to be in. And Papa, you can tell by his face, he looks a little irritated. I know that he's the coach of the Dukes. Maybe they just lost a game. He comes in, and what's Reginald doing? He's playing the violin. You got it. So if we continue on, I would also consider the beginning of the text to be this part of the story, where Reginald goes on to be the bat boy, right? Papa wants him to be the bat boy for his team. And here I can see Reginald brings out all those bats, and then this player by the name of Mr. Forrest trips and falls. Whew! Reginald's kind of stinking up his job as bat boy, unfortunately. So now let's go back to Papa. We want to focus on his character and how he's feeling at this point in the story. So in my brain, I'm thinking of character traits, words that can describe the character, not necessarily their outer appearance, but really how they're feeling inside. And when I think of Papa right now at the beginning of the story, the word that comes to my mind is disappointed. So if I'm thinking about Papa's character trait that would describe him at this point in the story, I'm thinking disappointed. And now I've got to provide some evidence to support my thinking. Well, I know that in the beginning we said that Papa wants Reginald, that's his son, to become a bat boy. And he wanted to do that instead of focusing on playing the violin. Remember, Papa doesn't really think that the violin is like all that important. It's kind of a distraction almost. Now, we also consider this part in the story to still be part of the beginning. So he's also still disappointed, but now he's kind of disappointed with something else. He realizes that Reginald is not very good at being a bat boy. Again, still supporting that Papa is somewhat disappointed at this point in the story. I'm going to highlight that yellow so you guys make sure you can see where I'm typing. All right, So we know Papa's kind of disappointed at this point. So now we're going to continue on in the text. We know that unfortunately Reginald made another mistake. The bat's like super slippery. It flies out of the hand, almost hits the umpire, and we continue on. Papa says, you know what? You go sit down on the bench, play your fiddle. I'll take care of the bats. So now we're kind of getting into the middle of the story here. So things kind of change though. Reginald starts playing the violin, and you might recall that, wow, I think his name was, let me see, I don't remember if it was Mr. LaRue. I've got to look back in the text for a moment to see what this character's name was. I know he steps up to bat. Let me see. LaRue, right? He's nervous, and then he hears Reginald playing. It kind of calms him down. He even smiles. And he actually hits the ball right out of the park. He scores a home run. So we're not focused on Reginald, though. We're not focused on Mr. LaRue. We already know the plot. What we want to focus on right here is Papa. How do we think Papa's feeling at this point in the story? The middle of the story. We've got LaRue. We've even got, let's see, Mr. Irvin, the catcher's batting next, even the second baseman. But again, those aren't the characters that we're really focused on right now. We know that they do a great job. They hit the ball, they run, they score. How do you think Papa feels at this part in the story? I want you all thinking of a word that might describe his character right now. Just giving you a moment to think. Okay, so when I think of that list of character traits, there are two words that come to mind. I think that right now he's feeling very encouraged. The other word that came to my mind was hopeful. We know that Papa has been the coach of this team, the Dukes, and they've kind of been on this losing streak. But now something's changed. Now LaRue hits the ball out of the park, Irvin steps up and hits the ball, even the second baseman, and they all score. And right here we can even see the Dukes have beaten the Buckeyes 7-4. So evidence that he's feeling hopeful is that several players step up to bat and hit the ball. They even score and win the game 7-4. So how does that support that he's feeling hopeful? Papa feels that the team might even beat the, and I should go back in the text here. They're getting ready to play this big team that's like supposed to be the best in the league. Papa makes an important announcement. We got us a game with the Monarchs. And then he goes on to ask, well, are they any good? And then everybody's like, are you kidding? Of course they're good. They're like the best team. So now that's evidence to support that Papa's feeling hopeful and encouraged. Papa feels the team might even beat the Monarchs, which are the best in the league. Again, evidence to support that character trait of feeling encouraged or hopeful. So now we're going to focus on the end of the story and how Papa's feeling here at the very end. Well, we know that, let's see, they go on, they play the Monarchs, and unfortunately, the Monarchs, here's an illustration that supports that part of the text, that they hit the ball. It was like a tied game, basically. Reginald's playing the violin, but then the Monarchs, one of their players steps up and he hits the ball right out of the park. They score and they end up winning. You can see here Reginald's kind of hanging his head low. Papa's picking up the bats. So we might think that the end of the story is that Papa feels like discouraged or upset. However, we soon realize, though, that that's really not the case. Look at Papa's face as they're riding home on the bus together. He says, you know what, Reginald, take out the violin. We need something to cheer us up. So that, along with this illustration and this statement right here, Papa calls it he says, except we prefer calling it a violin. So it's that part of the text that makes me feel that now I would describe Papa as feeling very proud. And who's he proud of? Well, Papa is proud of his team and their accomplishments. He says that they wouldn't have gotten as far, right? They're sitting on the bus together, and I think he said here that they wouldn't have made it that far. He knows that Reginald helped the team win several games. Now, he's also proud of something else, not just the team and not just Reginald helping them, but he's proud of his son, right? He says that no matter what, he would love them or love Reginald. And then he also puts his arm around Mama and says, yep, we call it a violin. So Papa finally acknowledges that, oops, it would probably help if I spelled this correctly, acknowledges that it is called a violin. So again, evidence to support that Papa's proud of his team. He's also proud of his son, Reginald. So again, boys and girls, just to remind ourselves why we're taking the time to do this. We do this so that we really understand our characters and what they've gone through from the beginning, middle to the end of the story. And this will also help us later this week as we're really thinking a lot about the theme or the lesson that we learn, the reader, through our characters' actions. So that wraps up our whole group lesson for reading today. Make sure you check the other folders to see what we're doing in writing and math and science.